So, I didn't always start off wanting to run for office. That's a good thing. I'm not a sociopath. I can tell you that, I grew up within the welfare system. I had a very young single mother and a father that ultimately was not really in the picture. Although he loved me, he really struggled with substance abuse. And frankly, most of my family did. I had a grandmother that died of AIDS due to heroin use. And when you just start off a story like that, it's kind of just like, wow, how did you end up where you're at right now? And I really do believe that, sometimes in your life you might struggle with things that you don't fully understand why you're going through it at that point in time. I do believe that part of my story, although it might be something that many people might feel uncomfortable talking about, that it actually really gives me a strong platform in regards to a lot of the legislation that we see coming out of Washington, D.C., especially when it comes to issues that are affecting minority communities. By the time I had graduated, I had gone to over 6 high schools. One of the high schools that I attended, there was a gang shooting on campus. I got jumped, and so to give you kind of some perspective, I was literally in LA County school system during the 90s and during the early 2000s, when ultimately it was at the highest point that they had gang activity. So it's interesting today, you see a lot of people out of Washington, D.C. that don't want to go for school choice. One of the reasons why I am so pro-school choice is because of the fact that I had to go to schools based on my zip codes that were frankly really ghetto schools. And as a result of that, I got hurt a lot of times, and it's not good. If you really want to help this nation's youth, you have to start by giving them a good education at the beginning of life. So by the time that I had graduated, I ultimately wanted to go to college. I had no idea how to even do that. I didn't know what the ACT was. I didn't know what the SAT was. I didn't know that you had to literally apply to colleges a year out. I was basically at a house party. It's not too glamorous, and I heard these 2 young guys talking about how they were starting classes that Monday or Wednesday. And I was absolutely eavesdropping the conversation, and I said, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you guys look like you're about my age. I was 19 at the time. And I said, how are you going to school? And you guys are obviously on your own. You live in San Diego. And they said, well, we're Marines at Camp Pendleton. And so I was like, well, what does a Marine do? I didn't have anyone in my immediate family that had served. And they said, well, you can join the Marines by going to talk to a recruiter. So to kind of date myself a little bit for you guys, I went on Google and typed in a website called MapQuest. You know what MapQuest is. I printed directions and I drove to the recruiter's office. So that's actually how I ended up enlisting in the Air Force. It was actually in the Air Force. I didn't tell my parents that I was leaving until about maybe 2 months prior to me taking off. So my mom absolutely freaked out. I mean, I could hold the phone here and hear her yelling. She's like, oh my gosh, you're gonna die, what are you doing? But it was absolutely the best decision I ever could have made. It was where I was able to actually enroll in college. It's actually how I paid for my undergrad, and it's actually where I met my husband. So it was like a 2-for-1 special. Andy and I met 8 months into my military career. I thought that I was gonna go to the military, focus on school, serve my country, and I ended up with a husband. So that was 11 years ago, now 12 years as of this November 11th. So we're very fortunate to still be together. But as a result of that, I saw a lot of what Hollywood will not tell you the military involves. And in 2014, Andy was shot in Afghanistan. He was shot in his upper left thigh. It almost hit his femoral artery. And so we're lucky to have him here today. I remember the doctor actually pulled out his x-ray and said that it was a centimeter away from him basically bleeding out and dying. So I do believe that that happened for a reason. At the time, it was absolutely terrible. But during my time that I spent with him in recovery at Walter Reed Medical School in Maryland, I saw a lot of what the military doesn't show the American people, and that's the recovery fact after what happens with war. So there's obviously emotional and there's obviously physical. I actually ultimately ended up writing a book about it for especially spouses of injured military members. But I bring that up because here in Pinellas County, we have a massive, massive veterans population. We have one of the biggest veterans hospitals in the country. And I can tell you one of the most frustrating things as veterans, because it's not just me campaigning, it's Andy as well, whether or not he likes it. He's a part of the team.
I get sucked into it too.
But during COVID and during the last election cycle, we had hundreds of veterans reaching out that actually weren't able to access mental health services at Bay Pines. Some of them were ending up homeless because they were losing their jobs because of COVID. And they had actually reached out to Charlie Crist's office and got no response. And it was by the grace of God that we had met volunteers who had actually worked in Bill Young's office and worked for David Jolly before he became an independent. And they were ultimately able to get those veterans off the streets and really help. But as a veteran, there's no excuse as to why your congressional representative does not literally have an office at Bay Pines and is not putting veterans at the forefront, especially with what happened in Afghanistan only a few months ago. And it seems like now a lifetime ago, but that's so recent. So as I was going through this process with Andy, as he was recovering, I realized that the military was not providing some services to spouses, especially on the issue of PTSD. So this is actually how I got political, is I came across a nonprofit in my time working with other nonprofits to address PTSD. And one of the nonprofits I came across was called Veterans for Child Rescue. And that is a nonprofit founded by former military members that deals with child sex trafficking at the U.S.-Mexico border. So yes, we are absolutely talking about immigration tonight because that's a huge problem in our country in regards to open borders for its people on both sides. I did not realize at this point in time that our southern border was as bad as it was. And what I found out is that not only is the United States one of the top 3 countries in the world for human sex trafficking, but up until 2015, leftist-leaning news outlets, to include CNN, were actually addressing this issue of human trafficking. It wasn't until 2016, when at the time a candidate, Trump, who wanted to run for office, came along, that they actually completely pivoted their position on immigration, and illegal immigration at that. It is in my opinion that they did that because they realized that the largest voting minority here in the United States of America now, according to PewHispanic.org, is Hispanic Americans, specifically those of Mexican descent. And when people go to the polls, if you really want to get them excited to show up to vote for something, you have to give them something that they're emotionally charged on. So that's why you saw the pivot on these immigration issues, and then you started seeing them brand Republicans as being racist and xenophobic, and that it was our fault that there was kids in cages, even though the Obama-Biden administration built those cages. And President Trump, to his credit, was one of the only presidents that's done as much as he has for victims of human sex trafficking in an effort to stop that. So I start working with these organizations and I'm uncovering all this stuff. And my aha moment was, I was sitting in a hotel room, I was literally getting ready for one of my friend's weddings. I think I was doing some stuff for school. And I had CNN playing on the background, and it was covering a train that had been stopped in Mexico City because there was MS-13 and women and children on this train. So knowing what I know from working with these various counter-trafficking organizations is that 99% of the time, women and children are just hanging out with hardened cartel members. A lot of the time, they're being trafficked. And so I started paying attention to this story. And what the news anchor said was that this train was stopped because these people were making their way up to the United States, and that here at CNN, we think that everyone deserves equal access to this country. So what they did was they actually put together money, brought these people to the border, sent a camera crew down there, and filmed Border Patrol turning these people away. Then they said candidate Trump was bad, that they believed that everyone deserves access to this country, and then it cut to a pillow commercial, and that was the end of the segment. And at that point in time, I realized that the media was essentially pushing propaganda. I was just fresh out of the military, so I did not even think that that was possible, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And ultimately, after that point in time, I actually filmed a video. The video went rather viral. I said, look, I'm a second generation American, I'm half Hispanic, I'm clearly not racist, but we have an issue with border security. All of these issues are tied to it. And by the way, on average, just from the numbers that we have with UNICEF reporting, we have about 18,000 women a year that are trafficked, and that's not including the ones that aren't found. People didn't believe me. I posted a CNN article of a woman by the name of Carla Jacinto who had been raped 43,000 times in the time that she was trafficked. People thought I was lying about it, and so I realized that a majority of the American people aren't aware of it. When you talk about immigration, if you want people to wake up, you have to give them the information in order to do so. So because of that video, because of my work in counter-trafficking, I was actually contacted by Turning Point USA. The day before I was supposed to leave to go to medical school, so that was kind of my other path that I was on, Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA called me and he goes, Anna, you might not know me, my name's Charlie Kirk, I run this organization called Turning Point USA. I would like to offer you the position of a National Hispanic Outreach Director for Turning Point. can you please come work for me? And I said, well, I'm supposed to leave tomorrow, and I just spent a lot of time taking the MCAT twice, okay? So once was bad enough, but twice. And I already spent money on my deposit, and like, can't you find someone else to do it? He goes, no, because right now you're the only one focusing on these issues. And unfortunately, with where we're at in the political climate, because you are a minority, there's things that you can say, and they can't necessarily say that you're racist because of it. So he's like, can you come with our organization? And so I said, please give me 24 hours to really think about it. And so I had a decision to make, and the reason why I ultimately chose to stay and fight for this country is I saw at that point in time what was happening with the media. I saw what was happening with the younger generation really embracing these ideas of socialism. And I told Amy, I was like, I don't want to practice medicine in a socialist country. Like, I just don't want to do it. And so one of my mentors basically said, look, you can really help a lot of people. If it doesn't work out, I'll write you a kick butt letter of recommendation. We'll try to get you into school stateside because you're supposed to go to school in Grenada, which if you're around in the 80s, SGU, where the Marines had to go, that's where I got in. But we'll leave it at that. And so I embarked on my political journey. And it was 2 months into that job after cycling onto Fox News and Fox Business, and as a commentator, I realized that the media, if I wasn't talking about what the producers wanted me to talk about, that I wasn't able to change the messaging because no matter what, they were talking about what people were doing in DC. But if I wanted to really help change and impact legislation, I had to run for office. So I called Andy, said we're running for office. He was like, what do you mean we? I said, join effort.
I learned quickly what we meant.
He learned very quickly, and to his credit, that's actually how we were able to survive and move forward into a very, very successful race. If you followed the race last time, they said that I was projected to lose by 17 points. I lost by 5. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the fact that I am a candidate funded by people dollars, not special interest. So my average donation is about $20, and we were able to raise, was it over $3 million? Yeah, about $3 million from grassroots donations, and that's pretty impressive, especially being that Democrats like to say that Republicans are funded by special interests. Well, touche, no we're not. And so what my platform is for Pinellas County, it has not changed. I'm still very adamantly pro-life. I definitely hold my Christian values true to who I am, and before anything else, before I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. I'm very much so anti-communist, but I can tell you also that I want to fight for the veterans here in the community. I want to help end government corruption, which is exactly why I'm not taking certain special interest money and exactly why I'm funded by people dollars. I can tell you that that message also very strongly resonates with Democrats and independents, which is why they voted for me over Charlie Crist. I can tell you that everything that I talk about on the campaign trail, whether it's Second Amendment issues, whether it's school choice issues, is something that I've directly felt, something that I've directly experienced during my time. 32 years, I feel like I've been a nutcracker.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's like a nutcracker. We're all going to transport in time somewhere, and it's like getting weird. So these are the issues that I'm passionate about. I think that moving forward, I can tell you that one of the things that I was very happy to say is that a month ago, Andy and I flew out to New Jersey. We met with President Trump, and we talked about this race extensively, and that he endorsed me because of the fact that what I do and what I say on the campaign trail, I actually mean. I am a true conservative. I think I've proved that with my work, but also too, I mean, when I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. So as we know, COVID last cycle really kind of changed the way people campaign. But I did promise to bring Blexit, which stands for Black Exit, to South St. Pete, and I'm proud to say that on November 1st, I'm bringing a massive, massive movement to South St. Pete to do a Get Out the Vote event, and I encourage all of you to attend. It's going to be one of the first events of its kind in South St. Pete, and it's causing such a ruckus that the Tampa Bay Times actually did a hit piece on us and said that Blexit, which was founded by Candace Owens, by the way. Who knows who Candace Owens is? Woo! Okay, we love Candace. I love her too. She's my coworker, was my coworker at Turning Point now at Prager. But the point is that she started this organization, and they said that Blexit is an alt-right movement that has not, or 8 of the 10 speakers being minorities, saying it lacked diversity on the panel, which I laughed. I was like, clearly they're threatened because they think that they own the Democrat vote, and they clearly don't own the Black community. So we're very excited to say that we're doing that for the community, but also too, I'm really big on the environment. So I am a STEM major. I know I might not look super nerdy, but I am. Trust me, I'm always on the History Channel and watching Discovery Plus and this, that, and the other. But one of the organizations that Andy and I have still been involved with, and this is not just for politics, we've genuinely been involved in this organization because we really like what they do, is Force Blue. It's a nonprofit that focuses on coral reef restoration. They also do sea turtle rescues, and we've been connected with them for how many years now?
At least 3.
Yeah, at least 3 years now. And so when people talk about doing things, I'm a doer, not a talker. During what happened in Afghanistan, I was able to bring together the entire community in Pinellas County to actually do a donation drive for a lot of the troops, and then also to some of the refugees that were our allied forces. I got Democrats bringing in donations, and I know they're Democrats because they would wear their masks inside and drop things off and then look away from me and say thank you and then like run out the door. So it's good though, because it means that they knew who I am, they know that I can bring the community together, and that they're listening to the messaging. And so with everything that I'm doing, that is my focus. If you see it on the campaign platform, it's definitely something that I hold true to. I'm not afraid of shying away from some of those more difficult questions. If I don't know it, I'm gonna tell you I don't know it, and I'll research it and get back to you. So with that being said, would any of you like to ask me questions about my platform? And also too, if you like what you have to hear, I do ask you to please consider donating. Grace and Mackenzie are both with my campaign, so they can help walk you through the donation process. And I hope that not only do every single one of you vote for me, but that you also end up coming out to work on the campaign trail with us. Because we have a lot of fun. You might not have done campaigning before, but I can tell you that we get a pretty lively crowd, and this is one of the top targeted seats, not only to take back the House, but it is redistricting, it is an open seat, and we're hearing that it's going to be going red. So this is going to be one of the top tier races in the country. It's going to be an absolute metaphorical knife fight, but don't worry, I'll get through it, and hopefully I'll be your next representative. Thanks. Oh, and one last thing, we got polling back just yesterday. I'm projected to win the primary by 64%.
Nice.
So solid. It's a solid